In the early hours of February 13, 1945, a freight train snaked through the snow-covered Polish countryside. Its cargo, 24 tons of gold bullion, priceless artwork, and irreplaceable cultural treasures, all stolen by the Third Reich. The Nazi officers aboard had one mission: deliver this immense fortune to Hitler's mountain stronghold as the Reich collapsed around them, but they never arrived. For 60 years, historians would attribute the train's disappearance to Allied bombing or partisan activity. The truth was far more extraordinary. A 52-year-old librarian with failing eyesight and arthritic hands had single-handedly orchestrated one of the greatest acts of financial sabotage in World War II. Her name was Jadwiga Korczynska, and this is the story the Nazis tried to erase. Before war engulfed Europe, Jadwiga lived a quiet life devoted to books and knowledge. Born in 1892 in Krakow, she came from a family of academics. Her father, a renowned linguistics professor, had instilled in her a passion for languages, codes, and the power of information. By the 1930s, she had risen to become the head archivist at Krakow's Jagiellonian University Library, where her keen eye for detail and encyclopedic memory made her respected among Poland's intellectual elite. Jadwiga's small apartment near the Old Town was filled with books in a dozen languages. She never married, often joking that she was already wed to knowledge. Her colleagues described her as methodical, unassuming, and possessing a quiet determination. Her round glasses and silver-streaked hair pulled into a tight bun gave her the appearance of the quintessential librarian, invisible in plain sight. In her free time, she volunteered teaching literacy to working-class children. She believed fervently that education was the cornerstone of freedom. Books are weapons in the war of ideas, she often told her students. Little did she know how prophetic those words would become. By 1939, Jadwiga had built a peaceful, ordered life centered around her beloved library, her few close friends, and her collection of rare Polish poetry. She had traveled to archives across Europe and built a network of scholarly contacts. At 47, she expected to spend the rest of her days among the stacks of books she cherished. But the war had other plans. September 1st, 1939. The library windows rattled as German bombers roared overhead. Within days, Nazi troops marched through Krakow's cobblestone streets. What followed was a systematic destruction of Polish culture and identity, exactly what Jadwiga had dedicated her life to preserving. By October, the Nazis had closed the university. Professors were rounded up and sent to concentration camps in the infamous Sonderaktion Krakow, a deliberate attempt to decapitate Poland's intellectual class. Jadwiga watched in horror as colleagues disappeared one by one. Then came the order that changed everything. The occupiers appointed a Nazi librarian to supervise the cataloging of the university's collections. His real purpose: identify valuable cultural artifacts for seizure and transport to Germany. Jadwiga was kept on only because of her organizational skills and knowledge of the archives. "You will continue your work," the German administrator told her coldly, "but now you serve the Reich." Each day became a quiet agony. Jadwiga was forced to document her own culture's dismantlement. She watched as priceless manuscripts were packed into crates marked for Berlin, medieval illuminated texts, Renaissance astronomical charts, centuries of Polish intellectual heritage, all slated for theft. The final breaking point came in early 1940. While cataloging newly confiscated items, Jadwiga discovered a collection of family diaries that had belonged to the Goldstein family, prominent Jewish bankers from Krakow. All family members had been deported to the Płaszów camp. Among the papers was a small photograph, 3 smiling children on a summer day. On the back, written in a child's handwriting, "For when we return home." They never would. That night, Jadwiga burned with quiet rage in her apartment. For months she had documented, followed orders, kept her head down, telling herself she was preserving what she could. But the photograph forced her to confront an uncomfortable truth. Her compliance was enabling theft on an unprecedented scale. This was the moment she realized she could not stay silent. Jadwiga's resistance began subtly. A deliberate mistranslation here. A catalog entry mysteriously vanished there, small acts of defiance that nonetheless risked her life. In late 1940, her former colleague Tadeusz Pankiewicz, a pharmacist operating the only pharmacy permitted in the Jewish ghetto, approached her after noticing her small acts of sabotage. He connected her with the growing Polish underground. "We need someone with your skills," he whispered during a clandestine meeting, "someone who can read between the lines." Jadwiga's transformation from librarian to resistance operative was neither dramatic nor romantic. There was no glamorous recruitment, no weapons training. Instead, she was given a simple task: observe, record, and report on Nazi shipments of confiscated goods. Her position was perfect for espionage. The Nazis viewed her as they viewed all librarians, as a harmless, aging woman useful only for her organizational skills. This invisibility became her greatest weapon. "It's extraordinary how completely they ignore me," she wrote in her hidden diary. "I stand in the same room as SS officers discussing shipment routes, and they speak as freely as if I were merely another bookshelf." By 1942, Jadwiga had developed an elaborate system. As the official cataloger of confiscated items, she had access to manifests, shipping documents, and transfer orders. She began creating duplicate records, one for the Germans, one for the resistance. Her decades of experience with archival systems now served a deadly serious purpose. The resistance provided her with a forged identity card for Maria Kowalska, a cleaning woman. Using this alias, she would deliver coded messages hidden in ordinary books to resistance contacts throughout the city. The codes were based on obscure medieval Polish manuscript conventions that only another librarian would recognize. No one suspected that the quiet woman in reading glasses, who German officers routinely ordered to bring them coffee, was meticulously documenting every stolen painting, every confiscated gold bar, every looted family treasure. "I've spent my life studying how information is organized," she wrote. "Now I am using that knowledge to disorganize them." By 1943, Jadwiga had become an invaluable asset to the Polish underground. Her perfect memory and access to shipping documents allowed the resistance to track Nazi looting operations throughout occupied Poland. But her greatest contribution to the war effort was yet to come. No one suspected that the quiet librarian in the corner office was carrying the secrets of the Reich's greatest treasures in her careful, catalog-trained handwriting. Mission 1. The art rescue of Wawel Castle. In spring 1943, Jadwiga discovered something alarming while sorting requisition forms. The Nazi governor had ordered the removal of all remaining art treasures from Krakow's historic Wawel Castle. Among the items slated for transport was Leonardo da Vinci's Lady with an Ermine, a masterpiece of Renaissance art and a Polish national treasure. Using her position, Jadwiga gained access to the complete inventory and shipping schedule. The painting, along with dozens of other priceless works, would be moved in 3 days. The opportunity was fleeting, but the risk enormous. That night, she made her way through curfew-darkened streets to meet her resistance contact, Professor Karol S. Streicher, an art historian working with the Polish government in exile to document Nazi art theft. "They're emptying Wawel completely," she whispered, passing him the shipping details. "Thursday, before dawn." What followed was one of the most daring art rescue operations of the war. While Jadwiga couldn't directly intervene, her intelligence enabled the resistance to execute a brilliant deception. Using her detailed information, they created a diversion at the scheduled departure point, causing enough confusion for Polish museum workers, who were part of the resistance, to substitute high-quality forgeries for several of the most important pieces. The Nazi art officers, none of them experts, failed to notice the switch. The originals disappeared into a network of hiding places throughout Krakow. Jadwiga recorded in her diary, "Today I watched them load the trucks with wooden crates. Inside one of those crates was an empty frame and a clever fake. The real lady travels through underground passages tonight." Leonardo would appreciate the subterfuge, but success came with consequences. The Nazi administrators, suspecting information had leaked, increased security and scrutiny. Jadwiga found herself subjected to random searches and questioning. Twice she narrowly avoided discovery of her duplicate record-keeping system. "They search my desk, but not my mind," she noted, "and my mind contains their entire operation." Mission 2. The Cipher in the Catalog. By late 1943, the tide of war was turning, and the Nazis began accelerating their looting operations. WWII noticed a pattern in the shipping manifests. Large quantities of industrial materials being transported from Poland to Germany via heavily guarded trains. The manifests used a numerical classification system that didn't match standard Reich protocols. Working late nights in her apartment, WWII applied her librarian's expertise in classification systems to crack the code. After weeks of analysis, she realized the truth. These weren't industrial materials at all. The Nazis were using a specialized catalog system to disguise the movement of gold currency and financial instruments stolen from conquered territories and Holocaust victims. "It's elegant in its simplicity," she confided to her resistance handler. "They're using a modified Dewey Decimal System to categorize their plunder. Only someone trained in library science would recognize it." This discovery was momentous. Allied intelligence had been trying to track Nazi gold movements for years. WWII's decoded information provided the first comprehensive map of how the Reich was moving its stolen wealth. Through her resistance contacts, this intelligence made its way to London, where it proved invaluable to economic warfare experts planning for post-war financial recovery. But the risk to WWII grew exponentially. The Gestapo began investigating information leaks in the property office where she worked. In December 1943, disaster nearly struck. A surprise inspection caught her with unauthorized documents. Quick thinking, she claimed she was simply being thorough in her archiving duties. Her reputation for methodical work saved her, but the German supervisor remained suspicious. "I felt his eyes on my back all day," she wrote. "My hands trembled so badly I could hardly hold my pen, but I cannot stop now. Too many are counting on this information." But she didn't know the Gestapo had already placed her under surveillance. Mission 3. The Railway Sabotage. By early 1945, Germany's military situation had grown desperate. Allied forces advanced from west and east, and the Reich began a frantic effort to secure its stolen treasures. In January, WWII intercepted documents revealing a plan to transport an enormous shipment of golden artworks from Poland to Hitler's Eagle's Nest in Berchtesgaden. The shipment was staggering in scale, nearly 24 tons of gold bullion, thousands of rare coins, crates of currency, and selected artworks, all looted from across Eastern Europe. It represented not just immense wealth, but the cultural heritage of multiple nations. WWII immediately recognized this as her most important discovery yet. But with the Soviet army approaching Krakow, the resistance network had begun to fragment. Many of her contacts had either fled, been captured, or gone deeper underground. For the first time, WWII realized she would have to act more directly. Using her knowledge of the Nazi filing system, she carefully altered key documents, changing routing numbers, switching destination codes, and modifying the train's scheduled departure. Her decades of experience with meticulous record-keeping now enabled her to commit the perfect forgery. The alterations were so precise that not even the German quartermaster noticed them. "I have spent my life ensuring documents are perfectly accurate," she wrote. "Now I use that same skill to make them perfectly inaccurate." The day before the gold train's scheduled departure, WWII took her most daring step yet. Posing as a cleaning woman, she entered the Railway Administration office after hours and replaced the final transit orders with her modified versions. The next morning, February 13, 1945, the heavily guarded train departed, but following the wrong route. Instead of taking the secure southern path to Bavaria, it headed west, toward an area where Polish partisan activity was intense and Soviet forces were advancing rapidly. Radio reports came in later that day. The train had been attacked near the Czech border, its Nazi guards overwhelmed by combined partisan forces who had been tipped off about a German evacuation train. The gold shipment vanished, not into Hitler's mountain retreat, but into the chaos of war's end. What no one knew, not the Germans, not the partisans, not even most of the resistance, was that the ambush was only possible because a librarian had quietly changed some numbers on a shipping form. This mission would become her last. 3 days after the gold train disappeared, the Gestapo came for Jadwiga. Someone had talked. A dawn raid on her apartment found her burning documents in her small stove. She was arrested immediately and taken to Gestapo headquarters on Pomorska Street, a place few returned from. The interrogation lasted for days. Sleep deprivation, bright lights, constant questioning. The Gestapo knew something had gone wrong with the gold shipment, but couldn't determine exactly what. They suspected sabotage but had no proof. Jadwiga revealed nothing. Drawing on her librarian's patience and precision, she stuck to her story. She was a simple cataloger who followed orders. When presented with altered documents, she calmly pointed out that many hands processed such papers. Her interrogators grew increasingly frustrated with this unassuming, bespectacled woman who seemed incapable of the sabotage they suspected. They wanted a resistance fighter, she later recalled. They couldn't see that resistance takes many forms. After a week of interrogation, the evidence against her remained circumstantial. But it was February 1945. The Reich was collapsing, and the Nazis no longer needed even the pretense of due process. Jadwiga was scheduled for transportation to Ravensbrück concentration camp. The night before her transport was to leave, Soviet forces launched a surprise assault on Krakow's outskirts. In the ensuing chaos, with German forces preparing for evacuation, the prison where Jadwiga was held experienced a power failure. A sympathetic Polish guard, recognizing her from her library days, left her cell unlocked during the confusion. By morning, she had disappeared. What happened during the next 3 months remains largely unknown. Fragmentary evidence suggests she found refuge with a former student's family in rural Poland. Her health, already compromised by age and arthritis, deteriorated further under the stress of interrogation and escape. When Poland was liberated by Soviet forces, Jadwiga faced a new dilemma. Her anti-Nazi resistance activities made her a hero, but her connections to the Polish intellectual class made her suspect to the new communist regime. She made the painful decision to erase her own story, a final act of self-preservation. In official records, Jadwiga Korczynska disappeared from history. She adopted yet another identity, that of her own fictitious cousin, and returned to library work in a small provincial town, never again setting foot in Krakow. History would remember what she did next. For nearly 60 years, the mystery of the Nazi gold train remained unsolved. Official histories attributed its disappearance to partisan action or Allied bombing. Jadwiga Korczynska lived out her remaining years in obscurity, dying in 1972 in a small apartment surrounded by books. Her death certificate listed her occupation simply as librarian. No obituary noted her wartime activities. The truth might have remained buried forever if not for post-Soviet archival reforms. In 2003, a young Polish historian named Małgorzata Wilczek was researching Nazi art theft when she discovered inconsistencies in wartime shipping records. Her investigation led her to a set of duplicate manifests, one official, one altered, preserved in forgotten files. Further research uncovered Jadwiga's hidden diary, concealed behind a false panel in an antique desk bequeathed to the provincial library where she spent her final years. The diary detailed her resistance work, including the gold train operation, in meticulous librarian's handwriting. In 2005, the Polish government posthumously awarded Jadwiga Korczynska the Order of Polonia Restituta, one of the country's highest civilian honors. The gold itself was never fully recovered. Most had been distributed among partisan groups who used it to rebuild devastated communities or smuggled it abroad to fund the Polish government in exile. Perhaps most remarkably, several of the artworks she helped save, including Lady with an Ermine, hang today in Polish museums, a testament to her success. The Leonardo masterpiece, which she prevented from disappearing into Hitler's private collection, has been viewed by millions who never knew the librarian who saved it. Historians now estimate that Jadwiga''s intelligence work helped track over $150 million in Nazi-looted assets in contemporary value, and directly saved cultural treasures worth incalculable sums. More importantly, her work provided crucial evidence for post-war restitution efforts that continue to this day. The story of Jadwiga Korczynska offers a profound reminder that resistance takes many forms. While fighters wielded guns and saboteurs planted bombs, a quiet librarian wielded information and planted discrepancies in the administrative heart of the Reich. Her weapons were catalogs, classification systems, and the power of accurate information, or strategically inaccurate information when necessary. In Warsaw today, a small plaque in the National Library commemorates her contribution with words that would have made her smile in modest appreciation. She saved our heritage with nothing more than a pencil and the courage to use it. Her name may fade on paper, but her courage never will.